France and several Western allies formally recognized the State of Palestine, a historic shift in global diplomacy, even as Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects ceasefire calls at the United Nations General Assembly. On the ground in Gaza, more than 40 people are killed in new strikes, with civilians now facing famine-level conditions. Joining us is Mounir Anastas, the ambassador of the State of Palestine, to help us understand both the humanitarian crisis and its global implications. Good morning, Ambassador.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ambassador Mounir. Thank you for being here with us. Ambassador, before we turn to diplomacy and economics, can you give us a brief of what's going on the ground in Gaza right now?
Well, unfortunately, on the ground up till now, the situation is as bad as the 2 years, the past 2 years, which means famine is there, destruction is ongoing, bombardment and fire is going on as well. Humanitarian aid is forbidden. There are no medicines. Hospitals ran out of medicines, all kind of medical drugs and oxygen and anesthetic products and so on. So the situation, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is so bad. In addition, the famine and the starvation is still there. The population is dying not only because of the bombardment and the Israeli attacks, but also because of the famine. Unfortunately, the situation is not enhancing, is not better than the days before. Just yesterday, 40 or 45 people were killed. Each day there is 40, 50, 100 people killed either by the Israeli bombardment and attacks or by famine and the absence of food in this trip.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that. But on the diplomatic side, there is international pressure against Israel. Almost 160 countries, including France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Portugal, now recognize Palestine. How significant is this morally and legally?
Well, morally, it's very important for our population in the West Bank and in Gaza principally. Now, legally, it is very important because this step is a contribution in isolating politically and diplomatically Israel on the international scene. This is the first thing. Then it is an expression of a strong support for the two-state solution. It is also an expression of a strong support against the annexation of the West Bank that was intended by Israel. Unfortunately, now even President Trump said that he wouldn't allow such annexation. So this recognition is very important for us, and it is the first step toward the two-state solution and having the State of Palestine living side by side in peace and security next to Israel, the occupying power for the moment.
That's the end goal, lasting peace. Interestingly, the Philippines recognized Palestine in 1989, 36 years ago. Why has it taken so long for the other countries, France, the superpowers, the UK, Canada, Portugal, Australia, to recognize Palestine?
Well, in that case, we should go back to the history. The State of Palestine was proclaimed in 15 November in Algeria, 15 November 1988. Remember, at that time, it was still the end of the Cold War, which means the world was divided into two blocks, Eastern and Western bloc. And at that time, right after the proclamation of the State of Palestine, almost 100 countries immediately recognized Palestine in 88 and 89, including the Philippines. But again, at that time, there was this division in the world, and all these countries that recognized Palestine, the 12 countries that you mentioned who recognized Palestine a few days ago, or last week exactly, they were more in the Western bloc, and Palestine and the supporters of Palestine were almost all of them in the Eastern bloc. Part of them were in between, just like Philippines. At that time, it was not completely Eastern, not completely Western, and some other countries as well. But all these countries, Canada, Australia, UK, France, etc., they were considered being part of the Western Bloc. And then everything changed starting from 1990 and 91, right after the collapse of the USSR and the end of the Cold War. And then there were many countries, European countries, who started to change their approach and their relation with the PLO at that time, the legal and lonely representative of the Palestinian people. And then we went to the negotiations with Israel and we reached the Oslo agreements. But unfortunately, of course, as usual, Israel did not comply with these agreements. It is due principally to the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister at that time, who was, let's say, the leader of these agreements and who was willing really to implement them. But right after him, no Israeli leader was willing to implement these agreements, and that's why we reached this situation that is a horrible situation for our population.
You know, diplomatically, with more countries now recognizing Palestine, how much closer does this bring you to peace and stability?
Well, the problem is not the number. We are, as you mentioned, about 160 countries recognizing the state of Palestine. Among them, there are 4 permanent members of the Security Council, but there is only one member in the Security Council on who everything depends.
Yes.
Remember, this member we're talking about, it's the US. During the last 2 years, they used the veto against resolutions for the ceasefire 6 times. Yeah. Resolutions asking for the ceasefire and the release of hostages, but they vetoed all these resolutions. So the position of the US is very important, and this will allow us to have our state realized completely. Our state currently exists, but it is under occupation. And part of it is completely destroyed, which is the Gaza Strip. There's another question, probably we'll talk about it, the economical interest of Israel and the US at the moment. They expressed that, you know, there is a gas in the Sea of Gaza, and it is an important wealth. And at the moment, President Trump was intending to push out the whole population, displace the whole population of Gaza, and to take over Gaza and to create a Riviera. But fortunately, he changed completely his position with his new plan with 20 points.
Speaking of the new plan, U.S. President Trump says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is backing a U.S.-led peace plan to end the war in Gaza, which includes a hostage swap. What are your thoughts on this, Ambassador?
Well, our authority, our government welcomed the efforts by President Trump to reach peace and stability, because part of it is very important for us. First of all, it is the immediate ceasefire. This is the most important thing. Second thing, it is the humanitarian aid that will be allowed to arrive under the UN supervising and authority. These are the most urgent things that we are looking for. Then third positive thing he mentioned, as I said before, he said he wouldn't allow the annexation of the West Bank, and this is very important for us, and otherwise it will forbid the existence of the Palestinian state. So these are very important and positive things included in the Trump plan. There are some other things that needs to be a little bit more clarified and considered. For example, there is a provision for the withdrawal, but progressive withdrawal of the Israeli army, but there is no clear timeline for this. So there are many things that needs to be clarified.
Speaking of the many things that need to be clarified, Ambassador, a large impetus, the impetus for the conflict has been Hamas. What role does Hamas have in Palestine now? And how do we, how do you break away from that? Because that was really the crux.
Well, there is an international request to exclude Hamas from the political Palestinian scene. And our leadership said that they are willing to do so and to implement reforms and to conduct within 1 year after the ceasefire elections, presidential and parliamentary, which means legislative elections. So Hamas is not anymore the problem. Currently, the problem is the ceasefire and how we deal of implementing the proposal that is a little bit close to the Arab plan. It talks about a theocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee for running the governance of the civil society, but under the supervision and oversight of an international body that the Trump plan called Board of Peace. This board will be shared, following what is mentioned in the plan, by President Trump himself, and Tony Blair might be member of it. But all these
Still
things,
taking shape.
yeah, but all these things needs to be more clarified and discussed. And in theory, this is only a transitional period before handing over the governance to the Palestinian Authority.
Oh, okay. France has proposed a United Nations stabilization force in Gaza. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, this is something that we were asking. Our leadership has been asking for such an international force since a long time.
Yeah, a peacekeeping force.
Yeah, a peacekeeping force. If it was there, there wouldn't have been all these massacres and this genocide that is going on.
With international presence, it would be a deterrent to enact more violence.
This is the purpose of such a force, is to avoid any belligerent intentions. But unfortunately, it comes a little bit late. Now, it is better late than never. But meanwhile, we witnessed a genocide, a huge genocide in the 21st century. This is unbelievable. And I think history will judge all those who were silent during this genocide.
Palestinian officials, how are they participating in this? How are they voicing their support for these international, proposals?
Well, our leadership expressed their satisfaction, and they welcomed the efforts of President Trump to end the war in Gaza, and they expressed their willingness to cooperate with the U.S. President in order to go forward in the not only the ceasefire, but also the day after with the reconstruction of Gaza. With this transitional period, our leadership accepted a transitional period with the view to handing over the governance to the Palestinian Authority later on.
And as Gaza faces famine-level conditions right now, what's the bare minimum needed in order for aid to be able to come through?
Well, we've been asking for this since a few months ago. The most important thing is to give authority to the UN bodies who are in charge of the humanitarian aid and who has the experience of delivering this humanitarian aid. So now in the Trump plan, it seems that this will be provided immediately right after the ceasefire. And this will allow stopping this starvation in Gaza.
Yeah, that's what's important now, the ceasefire, so aid can come through. Beyond the war, who should govern post-war Gaza? Logically, the government, but how's that looking?
Well, following the proposal of President Trump, there will be, as I mentioned, a Palestinian apolitical, a technocratical committee who will be in charge of the governance of the civil society and the management of the daily issues, but under the supervision of an international body, which is the Board of Peace that I mentioned, with President Trump at the head of this body, and membership of many others, including Tony Blair. But as I mentioned, this needs to be discussed with our leadership. And it is mentioned that afterwards it will be a transitional period, waiting for the reform of the Palestinian Authority to be implemented, and then it will be handed over to the Palestinian Authority.
Yeah.
But here also it needs a kind of clarification, because there is no clear timeline and what is meant by completing the implementation of the reform. Is it only the elections? Is it other things? So
There's so much to take into consideration for post-war Gaza, especially when you think about the economy of Gaza that has been completely decimated.
Absolutely.
Tourism, nil. I mean, you are from Bethlehem.
Yes.
90% of that was just born out of tourism, of people wanting to visit the city of Bethlehem. It's been decimated. How do you build your economy from the ground up after such a travesty?
Well, this is a huge challenge, and this will be the purpose of this Palestinian committee under the supervision of this international body. For Gaza, as you mentioned, economy is completely decimated. There is no economy, no jobs, no growth, no investment, nothing at all in Gaza. So the first thing is the reconstruction, and we are talking not only reconstruction of housing, but first the infrastructure that has been completely destroyed. We are talking about the infrastructure for water, for electricity, for communication. This is the first thing. Then the important civil services like hospitals, it is very important. All hospitals were destroyed. Then most important thing is schools and universities. 500 schools were destroyed,
There's
either completely
so much rebuilding, and all of this is going to be very expensive.
Yes.
Where do you draw the kitty from to rebuild economically?
There are commitments from many Arab countries and some European countries, and there is a coalition actually that has been created a few days ago, that includes 12 countries. Out of them there is Saudi Arabia, France, Spain, Norway, Denmark, I don't recall all the names, UK also, Japan as well. It is a financial coalition to support the Palestinian Authority, because now the Palestinian Authority is facing a huge financial crisis due to the Israeli, again, illegal practices. They are withholding the tax money for Palestine. We are talking about $1 billion since more than three years. So our authority is unable to pay salaries for the employees. So this financial coalition is just to support the Palestinian Authority currently. Now, for the reconstruction, there is other commitments from other countries, including Arab countries, especially from the Gulf countries, who are willing to pay. We are talking about $54 or $56 billion, which is a huge amount. But there is an international commitment to cover these expenses. I mentioned something also at the beginning, that Gaza, it has a wealth, but for the moment, it's not exploited. It will be in the future.
Right.
There is gas in Gaza. This is for Gaza. So before talking about relaunching the economy of Gaza, there's the reconstruction, and it will take time. Now, for the West Bank, you mentioned the case of Bethlehem. It's my city. It relies principally on tourism, and since 2023 and 2023 till today, tourism is null, zero in Bethlehem. So hotels are closed. We are talking about something like 40 hotels in the city. All of them are closed. Souvenir shops are closed. The manufacturers of handicrafts relating to the Nativity and to Christmas and things like that.
It would have been a great time to visit under better conditions.
So everything is halted. Everything is stopped. Now, in addition, there is the restriction of movement between the Palestinian cities. As you know, We have our governance within the cities. For example, the city of Bethlehem is run and governed by the Palestinian Authority within the city. Same thing in the all other cities, Hebron, Ramallah, Jericho, Jenin, Nablus, etc. But when it comes to moving from one city to another, it is controlled by the Israelis. That's why we are under occupation. And there are 1,200 checkpoints in the West Bank. And do you see the size of the West Bank? 1,002, which means when we want to go from Bethlehem to Ramallah, we should pass through 5 or 6 checkpoints.
Okay, Ambassador Anastas, thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have now for this segment. We will definitely have to have you back on. But thank you, Ambassador Mounir Anastas from the State of Palestine.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure having me with you.
Okay.